Nick, welcome to the podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
Dude, it's been so great to get to know you over the past 20 minutes and over the past week from
And
researching
TikTok DMs.
Yes, sir.
All the good stuff.
So let's start off with, why did your mom call you Bob the Builder?
Well, I was always fixing things. Like, I loved fixing things. It was everything from screwing something in, like simply with a screwdriver, or I just loved the toolbox also. Like, I loved putting things together. I loved Legos as a kid. Like, I didn't have video games till 10, and the only other time I would play video games is like going to a friend's house, but I was never good because I didn't understand any of the controls or anything. So it was like Legos, it was blocks, it was like in my elementary school, like the woodworking class or the clay pottery. And I've always just liked building things with my hands, and seeing the evolution of it. But Bob the Builder, probably because I loved watching Bob the Builder. That was like my primetime show as a kid, probably longer than the average kid watches Bob the Builder. And then secondly, the other memory I'm getting is like playing with the dishwasher, fixing things around, or like, oh, this drawer doesn't roll in smoothly, and then I'd love to like get in and fix it up. So probably that.
What's the through line from Bob the Builder to building brands?
The through line as in like the fundamental?
As in the connection point, where you could look back and be like, wow, like I didn't realize I was doing this, and I'm actually doing this in my professional life.
Yeah. I think it's just the building things. Like, I've always admired entrepreneurs or builders, or and so I think for me it's just programmed in my head. I just love, like, I get satisfaction and dopamine from seeing things be built or pieces be put together and things work. That's probably it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, on a similar note from your childhood, why do you always find yourself quietly thanking your elementary school teacher, Jesse Brand?
Oh, dude, you're good. All right, so Jesse was a legend. He's still there. He's still the director of technology. And Jesse was just like, I remember when he joined, and his job was basically running the computer lab. And we had these Mac, like the colored iMacs, if you remember those, with like the circular mouse. I'm dating myself now, but, colored iMacs. And Jesse's job was basically to like teach us computers, give us computer literacy, basically.
What age is this?
This was, I'm forgetting, I want to say it was like probably third grade. Third or fourth grade, I think. And as a kid too, I've always just loved technology, like laptops, desktops. Like you give me the Sunday paper, I'm looking straight for computers and PCs and monitors and analyzing the costs between them as a kid. But Jesse was basically like, I'd used a computer before and kind of known my way around, but Jesse was like, this is how you adjust your resolution size, and this is how you type without looking at the keyboard, and this is how you, there was this program that MIT created called Scratch, and it's basically like the building blocks to code, and so you understand how code is working, or like the if-then statements and things of that nature. And he was teaching us that, and it's like everything that Jesse taught us, I could still, every day I could do something and think like, that's because of Jesse. Like, whether it's just writing an email and not looking, whether it's like knowing all the keyboard shortcuts around a Mac, whether it's even just like jumping into new programs and knowing like where to start in a new software, or how to think about where to start, like all that kind of stuff came from Jesse. And he was also equally as passionate about teaching us. And so, I think he pretty much built the technology curriculum from scratch. Like, I don't think it really existed when he got there. And so his passion then turned into, a passion for a lot of us. And Jesse was just, he's a living legend.
Isn't it interesting how one portion of your school had outsized returns on everything that you do on the day to day, and one person had an outsized return, it's like, it seems like if we were to redesign elementary school and middle school, we would spend 80% of our time on computers and computer related things rather than, math or science. Totally. And all those things are certainly helpful, but it's like everyone uses computers today in some form or function. Why is that not the thing that we focus the most time on learning?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what school curriculum looks like today. I'd be shocked if it's not, a lot more focused on not even just like the stuff we were doing. Because when we got it, it was like we were all kind of learning the computer together. Nowadays, it's like, you see 3-year-olds knowing iPads, inside and out. And so, like I always think if I were to grow up today, I would 100% learn how to code and figure that whole thing out, that whole world out, because, pretty much everybody I know, their life would be enhanced if they knew how to code, in addition to like what they do. It's just like that extra, 20-30% on top you can add to your firepower.
There are a lot of people graduating college right now who listen to this show and are wondering, what are the primary skills that they should learn? You mentioned coding as one. Yeah. What are some of the other things that they should be thinking about, or the skills that they should be thinking about if they want to advance their career and have the most impact on this world?
There's a few. I think one is cold emailing. Like knowing how to write a good cold email will change your life. Yes. And it will, if you have 2 people, equal credentials or whatever, one person knows how to write a good cold email and the other doesn't, the person who knows how to write a cold email will be exponentially more successful than the person who doesn't. So I think that's one. The other one I think is like knowing how to like show up at events. So like I think one thing that a lot of people do who want to, who are more ambitious or who are probably listening to this podcast, is they'll go to events, right? Networking events, meetups, community meetups. I remember in San Francisco, I used to go to like product hunt meetups all the time, or really like any kind of tech meetup that I saw, I'd be like, I want to go. And it probably wasn't until a little bit later when I realized like, oh, I should learn this skill of just walking up to somebody and saying what's up, and not just asking like, how's it going, or this weather, or what do you do, but like just asking them interesting questions. And it's actually it's just something of like, it's as easy as going to TikTok and searching interesting questions to ask people, and then just making that your opening question. So I think another skill is knowing how to just at an event, how to network properly, and also how to build a network. Like not just it's not just networking. It is it's figuring out how you can help somebody else unlock something they're working on, or help them unlock something. And to me, that's like proper networking. It's like you're not just networking for the sake of like connecting on LinkedIn or sending an email back and forth and saying, let's stay in touch. It's like if you go to an event and you see somebody you want to talk to, you want to, become peers with, it's like figuring out, okay, how can I help this person? And it doesn't mean you have to like spend hours doing something. It could just be something as simple as like, actually, this is, I think, the best tip. If you're good at introing people to each other, you get the most credit because you do nothing, right? You send one email. Although you have to pitch to like, if you were like, hey, intro me to this person, I'd go pitch to that person why they should spend, 20, 30 minutes on the phone with you. You make the connection and then you're done. Like if you're confident those are 2 people that should meet and should talk and something good would happen, you'll get the credit for the rest of their lives that you made the intro. And that might result in nothing, or it might result in like these guys started a company together, or these guys did something and it benefited both of them or one of them a ton. And you'll just always get the credit for something that took you 30 seconds. I think that's like the number one thing to build your network is like just be good at like understanding what people need and what people want and what people are good at, and then connecting other people that kind of fit that puzzle piece that they're like trying to attach to.
How did you connect Morning Brew and Mark Cuban?
Well, that one I saw, I think it was like so Mark Cuban was going viral those few days, I forget what he said. He said something about, I don't know, something on Twitter, and it was just going viral and viral. And I saw that, I think Kinsey, this was when Kinsey was hosting the show.
Kinsey Grant,
yeah. She replied to Mark and said something like, do you want to come talk about this on Business Casual? And so on Twitter, so if you're verified, you have a verified tab, which is where I imagine most celebrities spend their time, is just like, okay, I'm just going to look at that. But if you're Mark Cuban going viral on Twitter for business news, like that's going to be completely flooded. There's no chance, or very little chance, he's going to see that, and then you think of like the return on his time, like how much time does he actually spend on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So then I was like, all right, I know that if I email Mark Cuban, there's a pretty good chance he'll respond within 10 minutes. And I don't remember how long it took for him to respond, but I remember waking up, seeing the tweet. I saw it. I just wrote the email on my phone, sent it. And before I was out of bed, there was already like, he was down, and I connected him with Josh, who was the producer. And yeah, like that's a great example of like, the Morning Brew team. I mean, I'm pretty tight with them, but if I wasn't tight with them and I was like trying to get their attention or, go to drinks with them or meet up with them, like that's just, that's my buy-in, right? It's like, I brought the value up front, and now it's like, now I get to cash in these chips.
What compelled you to send that email when you didn't have anything to quote unquote gain?
I mean, I love Austin and Alex. I think they've built like such a sick business, and I just love them as humans too, like just people, just chatting it up and whatnot. And so I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then I'll get to text Austin and Alex and be like, look what I did. That was it. That was literally it.
Literally
There was no
other
motivation. Yeah, just do it for the story.
I love it.
Yeah.
And when I called Harrison Remler today, you're a good friend and somebody who's a good friend to me and a previous podcast guest, I called him like, what should I talk to Nick about? And he said, well, he's a super connector, and he does it in such a kind, generous, and warm way. And I think that story details it perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't have any objective when I connect people for myself. I love the satisfaction of other people saying, oh, she's awesome. I loved talking with her, and we're going to do some cool things together. And it's like, that's dope. That's literally all it is. It's just, I just want to say, oh, that's sick. But that's it. Yeah. There's no like agenda or anything behind it. I also just think there's, there's a lot of people I've met where I'll meet them and it's like, oh wow, this person, became a great friend or a great business contact, or we've done a bunch of stuff together. And I think more people should, I think everybody should should be able to feel that, or should be able to, if there's an opportunity sitting right there where two people could connect, and I'm pretty confident it'll help both of them, then I take every opportunity to try to do that.
Yeah. Well, Moise Ali is somebody who you connected with at some point in your journey.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago or more.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're running a podcast with him. You couldn't have predicted that connection.
Not at all.
Whenever you met him, but now you are. So how do you go about finding the people that you really want to be around and making it a priority to be and spend more time with them?
Man, it just comes down to the vibes at the end of the day. There's people you work with, and then there's people in your personal life. I feel like for me, a lot of that is actually pretty connected or intertwined, which I actually like, because it's like, oh, I can spend time with this person and we do cool stuff together. But Harrison's a great example of somebody who's just like a great person. We work out together every week, and it's always good vibes. It's always good energy. It's like it gets me refreshed or recharged, and I feel excited to go tackle the day after spending time with him. It's like I think it just comes down to the vibes.
Makes sense. What about David Perell? How did you and him become friends?
Oh, dude, I just texted him on the way here because I was missing him in the car. But him and I became friends through, he wrote an article back in the day on how Equinox is the new church. And And we followed each other on Twitter, and then I DM'd him the article, and I was like, dude, this is kind of sick. And he was like, we should jump on a call. And I thought, like, what? Why? And we jumped on the phone, and I was like, okay, like, why does this guy want to get on the phone? Does he want something from me? And so we chatted, and then that was kind of it. And then we were both in, I think, New York at the same time. And we met up to get ramen, I think. And then we just hit it off. And we just became absolute homies together over the last few years. But I think he's one of the smartest people I know. And so I love spending time with him. And David's amazing.
Well, it's so funny, like looking back on your LinkedIn posts and seeing you be like, everyone's got to check out David Perell's newsletter, and it's like him writing, and it's like probably so like funny. 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, like the connection that you made and the friendship you built, and like, look where he is now, look where you are now. It's just a beautiful thing to see.
Totally.
So I would love to go to the place of you doing CPR to save someone's life. Not many people can say that they've done that. The Heimlich. What happened there?
So it's pretty funny. So like my family and, mom, dad, sister, and then my mom's sister's family, there's 3 boys and then 2 parents. We went to a ton of weddings as a kid together. Like, so we would both be at the same hotels and the same events. And Indian weddings are long. They're not just like a ceremony and a reception. This is like you're committing to like 3 to 5 days. And so we would end up at these hotels, and me and the other 2 cousins, we would take a bell cart from the lobby, and we'd go ride around in the hotel, and we'd just do like random weird stuff. And so then we got a soccer ball, and this was at, I actually don't remember. I think it was at the San Francisco Westin Hotel in Union Square. But we got a soccer ball. We went to a ballroom. We were kicking it around. There was like a cleaning cart in the ballroom. And so my older cousin, the eldest of those 3, he was like, he basically just grabbed a, what's it called? The big lemon head round sphere candy. Jawbreaker? Is that what it is? It was a big ass candy. And he put it in his mouth, but then we were still kicking the ball around, and I guess he kicked it, and it like choked. It got stuck in his throat. And so he was like, trying to like get it out, and it didn't work. And then I just got behind him, and I was like, as a joke, because I thought he was joking. So as a joke, I started doing the Heimlich. And then I realized, oh shit, he's actually choking it. And then I was doing it for real, and it just flew out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you think about any at what age was that?
I was just trying to think. I can't remember if I was really young because I feel like it was when I was in 8th grade, maybe. Because that's when I got formal CPR training and got certified or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I say that because if that happened to me today, I would think deeply about the existential nature of life and death and how close we all are to that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if like those thoughts came into your mind. If not, then later on, like, wow, like my cousin was this close to dying, and like, like what does that mean? And what, I saved his life in some respect. And like, did you start thinking along those lines?
No, not at all. Actually, I think for the longest time I didn't even realize like he was actually that close. He was actually choking or like in like a fight or flight mode. But no, not really ever deeply thought about that. Yeah.
Do you ever think about those sort of things today? Like, about,
I mean, I definitely think
like your purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I always think like, you see car accidents that happen where a drunk driver hits somebody, completely paralyzed, or somebody dies, or, all these just random unfortunate things. And I think for me, it's always, every time I see it, it's a reminder of like, okay, well, if you're not happy about what you're doing right now, then you got to change shit up. Yeah. And And so a lot of times, like, you know, if I don't feel like I'm in a spot where I'm able to be excited about what I'm doing, then things get changed. Or, you know, even something as simple as like, you know, I realized that I was on client calls for Sharma brands 24/7, and I was like, I got to get myself out of these calls because like I can't do anything for them if I'm just sitting in phone calls all day. And so, you know, I was like, and this is not fun to me anymore. Like, if I'm just sitting on calls, that's not fun because I can't build anything. And so then, you know, got to change in there and pulled myself out all the way to, you know, if I ever felt like, or actually I did kind of feel like earlier this year, I was like, I want to get, you know, I want to get my brain stimulated again and like build something new. And that's why we launched Hooks. It was just like, oh, I want that fun of like, okay, let's figure out how we form an LLC and like, let's use Stripe Atlas and like set up a site and think about, you know, a go to market, just all that kind of like fun stuff. And so yeah, so I do think about it every time I see it. I think about, okay, well, this is like a check of am I still excited? Do I wake up happy? Do I wake up pumped? And so yeah, that's kind of how I view it.
What part of the building a brand is most exciting to you?
I think because it's like really hard, and I think I don't know if this was an Elon quote or an Nadal quote, but it was something about, I think it was Nadal, basically saying like the harder you work, the more exciting the outcome is because you know how hard you worked and how much you put into it. And so I think building a brand is really hard. I think launching anything is really hard, and but I also know that like with anything, if you stay at it, you will figure it out, right? Like you see this happen a ton where if you start 2 tracks and somebody says, you know, after let's say a year or 6 months, they're like, I can't really figure this out, versus the same person who can't figure it out at a year, but they stay at it for two more years. You know, they're the ones striking gold. And so yeah. And I think also I just like learning. I like consuming, and I like learning different things and seeing how different things work or how different worlds work. So I like that process too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you go about building a brand, like what is something that most people wouldn't expect, or that they would be like, wait, you do this, and why do you do it like that? Like what part of the brand building is to you most shocking, and that when you explain to people, they're surprised by it as well?
I think the biggest part is probably a lot of people think like that, you know, you can launch a brand and it's just got to have a cool design. It's got to have cool colors, cool fonts, good catchphrases, good copy, good messaging. But they don't think about, because it's hard to see this part. It's really like seen throughout every piece of it, but it's like the soul of the brand is something you don't see. And the way I've always thought about like e-commerce and everything that I've learned there is like, there's always people behind the screen, right? And like Gary Vee used to say this thing a long time ago about selling B2B. It's like you're still selling to somebody, a person at the end of the day. And like all the things that we interact with, you know, if you can think of them as more human or more people-like, you get more out of it. And so with brands, a lot of people think it's like, all right, let's get a cool logo, you know, sans serif font, pastel colored backgrounds. And that can definitely work at, you know, it did work for a long time. Like with Native, Moise and I talk about how, you know, he took the colors of Casper and the font of Harry's, and that's the Native brand still today, doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. But for a brand to launch today, you know, but you could also say like Reese's and Kit Kat have a ton of sugar, but they still do really well today. But it's like, if you were to launch today, a lot of those things don't work, or like the game is fundamentally different, you know, 0 to 1 than it was back then. And so with brands, like we always try to think about the soul, like who is this person, and what is this person consuming, and where are they consuming from, and what accounts do they follow on Instagram if this brand was a person, if they were a person on Instagram, what are they reposting to their stories, and what kind of stuff do they retweet on Twitter, and where do they, if they were going to go get brunch, like where are they eating exactly, and what are their favorite holidays, and on that, Labor Day, like what are they doing on Labor Day? Are they going to the Hamptons, or are they going to drive back home to like see family? And so we think about this as like a person, like if we were to really ideate a person, and then from there, either at the same time or probably somewhere around that time, we also think about, okay, well, who do we think the target consumer is based off of this? And we keep it as like, who do we think that consumer is versus like who is the consumer, because we actually don't really know yet until we launch it and we start pushing this out and we start to see who's responding, and then we can correct ourselves. But yeah, I think the soul of the brand is something that gets missed a lot, and especially in the last like probably 4 years or so, where a lot of these brands were launching they were launching, but they were so backed by venture capitalists whose goal was, it's going to 100 or we're killing this thing, fast. And so a lot of these brands didn't have a ton of soul. You think about Casper, there's no soul to Casper, right? Compared to something like 8 Sleep, there's a lot of soul in 8 Sleep. And so yeah, I think soul is a big one, and I think the reason a lot of people don't think about it as deeply when launching a brand is because they haven't seen that in a lot of brands. But then you think about brands that people love, like a Mad Happy, for example, or I'm trying to think of like a non-creator brand. Mad Happy is a perfect example. You feel an emotion or some sense of excitement, and it's because like you can imagine who Mad Happy is in your head, right? Compared to like a Casper, for example.
Makes sense. What was it like working with MrBeast for Feastables?
It was sick. Feastables is a brand that would do really, really well even without MrBeast. Their operations team is it's like there's PayPal Mafia. There's going to be a Feastables Mafia.
Really?
I guarantee it. Yeah. The entire team at Feastables is a phenomenal team, from the incubation, the Night Ventures arm, all the way to Jim Murray, who's the CEO, all the way to like the head of customer experience, to the growth team, to the operations team. I mean, it is just like it's the Avengers of commerce and CPG. But working on that project was so cool. I mean, I think we broke Shopify records. And there was another huge celebrity brand that we touched this year, and it came nowhere close. I mean, like the amount of influence and the depth of the relationship that MrBeast has with his fans is it's I don't even know. It's like a one in a trillion. It's crazy.
It's literally 1 in 8 billion people.
Yeah,
right?
no, 100%.
He's the only one.
Yeah.
But how did you get involved with that project?
I invested in the brand, and I can't remember where the intro came from for that. It might have been either Brian Sugar or Chris Cantino. But the intro came, and then, my first thought was, oh, there's like a few other people I think should definitely invest because they'd be super helpful in this, or they'd be able to do this, or they have connects into here, which would help the brand. And so yes, and then I put together a small SPV.
What's an SPV?
SPV is basically, let's say, this is the exact example. We have this group chat called Good Morning Bozos. That was the name of the group chat at the time. But everybody in this group chat does something in media, creative, commerce, retail, something. And it's just like one of my friendly group chats where we just, post all day and like shoot the shit. And so I was like, guys, we should all put some money into this. And it doesn't have to be like, 25, 50, 10,000. Usually like investing into a company of this caliber, it's like your minimum check has to be, 50 or 100 as an angel. But I was like, let's just pool our money together into one entity where we each own a percentage of that entity, and then we'll invest all this money as one check onto the cap table. And so we called it GMB Capital because, you can make up the name of this fake, not fake, but it's a real company. So Good Morning Bozo Capital. And then I invested on behalf of Masala Capital, which was a rolling fund that I had. And so that was, I think, how I got introduced. And then I just, I was always just trying to think like, okay, I mean, this happens with any company I invest in or advise or work with, is just like, okay, well, what could be helpful to them, or, whether it's making intros, whether it's just like jumping on the phone for 15 minutes, or even just like starting a group chat and throwing ideas around. And then eventually they were like, I told them like, this is what we do, just in case, like, if you guys are getting close to launch, you need some help, let us know. And then that was basically how we started working together, was, just to help them with the launch. And then we did the launch, did season 1. We worked, we just worked with them, and we still work with them today.
So cool.
Yeah.
And when you look at like the things that, to me, like that was the biggest, most recognizable name of anyone you've worked with. I mean, Emma Chamberlain and Chamberlain Coffee is up there as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, do you start to say to yourself like, oh my God, like how did I get into this position? Like went from, I don't know, like maybe 5 years ago, like you probably would have dreamed to work with the biggest creator in the world.
For sure.
So it's like,
it's cool because we've done a lot of stuff in the creator space, which I really love the creator space. And then we're also like, the really cool thing for me was getting an email from like the CMO of Patron, or the chief intelligence at Bacardi, or the the president of Estee Lauder. Like those emails too are just like, how is this possible? Like where's the cameras? Is this a prank? And I don't know. It's just it's a combination of, I think, two things. One is just like, we just do good work, I think, at Sharma Brands. And we take this approach of like this red carpet approach, which is like, you should, as the client, if you're bringing us on, like, you should know we've got your back. If you have a launch that needs to happen on a certain date, your launch will happen on that date. If your site goes down on launch, don't worry, we have 2 backups. And, so like that's what we bring on the launch. And on the other stuff, it's just like, I think we just work faster than a lot of other teams, because like we only work with 5 brands. So we don't work with a ton. And so that allows us, it definitely caps us in terms of like how much we can scale, but the quality of the work that we get out of it is so much better than if you go to, a random Facebook ad agency or a random web agency or random like retention team and try to do the same stuff. And so, so I think that's one part. The second part is just like this content that I put out is, like I've learned that a lot of the Fortune 500 C-levels, or basically people who like approve any of this stuff to happen, they love seeing that there's a lot of content, and they love seeing the blog posts and the emails and like the things on paper written down, and so I think that has been like a weird advantage, but a very cool one to have. But yeah, I think those are probably the two reasons that we attract a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, even working on Feastables or just like last night I was thinking like, wow, we work with Chamberlain Coffee. That's pretty wild. That's crazy.
It's amazing. So like Chamberlain Coffee wants your help in some respect. What are you doing to help Chamberlain Coffee?
Yeah, so I mean, for each brand that we have, the scope is usually pretty different. And the way we approach it is like, our team is capable of, launching a brand, and really, I would say almost anything within direct to consumer. It all kind of comes back to like, advertising, CRM or retention marketing, things around like operations and fulfillment, website development, website management, website innovation, launching ads, creating those videos, those statics, all the way to like, we were just on set last week with a big client of ours to do an entire photo shoot. And so we kind of became this like external in-house marketing team, or external in-house like growth team that can work with these brands and either take stuff off their plate or do things for them that they've thought about but didn't know how to do. Or a lot of times it's just like solving problems. So like the biggest catalyst to a lot of people working with us is just I'll get introduced to somebody and they'll say, like, yeah, we're having this problem where we can't figure out how to run influencer marketing in a way that like is tied to performance marketing. We every time we've tested it, it doesn't work, but we know that there's a way to do it. Or we can't seem to figure out like how to really scale customer acquisition. And also we have this website agency we just paid a ton of money to, and we're not really sure that they get it because we think we want a better looking website, but we don't know like how to do that or how to go about that. Can you guys just come in and take this all over? Or, and some are just super simple. Like we're just trying to get more efficient with our conversion rate, or we know that there's a lot of opportunity in our existing customer base, but we don't know how to go about extracting that. Or, we have one client who's doing like, 9 figures in revenue, and they're just like, we don't even know who our customer is, but we're killing it. But we need to figure out who our customer is so we can speak better to them and we can create better assets. And so a lot of it starts with like a question of like, or a problem rather. And then our scope becomes the solution to that problem. And so the advantage with working with, 5 or 6 brands at a time is that we can go pretty deep on a lot of this stuff and really like spend the time and do what's needed versus what you see with a lot of agencies. I shouldn't even be shitting on other agencies. I don't know why I'm doing this. We love like just going in, and we always think, okay, what can we do to like go above and beyond? And so, so we just always try to go above and beyond.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that from the roster and the people you've worked with and what they've said about you.
Yeah.
What do you say is what are the few small inflection points that most people wouldn't see in your journey that have led you to where you are today?
Small inflection points. I think one is, the earliest one I can think of is like going door to door to sell a bike in my neighborhood. I told my parents, like, I want this new bike at Walmart. And they said, yeah, go sell your current one and then we can buy a new one. And similar to that too, when I wanted an iPod, I wanted the iPod Touch when it came out. And before that, the iPod Nano or the iPod Video. And they were like, okay, well, make a presentation as to like why, why do you need this iPod? And so, the act of like thinking through that process or putting that PowerPoint together. And it wasn't just thinking through like, okay, well, how do I come up with a way that they see as beneficial, but also benefits me? But like, I don't really need an iPod. I kind of want an iPod, but how do I turn that want into a need in their eyes? So that was one part. The other part was just like learning PowerPoint. Like I became this PowerPoint ninja of, the animations flying in and like, then presenting it, and having it connected to the TV and like talking through it and all that stuff. I think that was like definitely one. Another one that I'm thinking of was in 2nd grade. We had a cash register in 2nd grade. It was the 2nd grade class had a cash register, and it was because a part of the year's curriculum was to put together like a soda business, and we had a mini fridge. We would cool the cans, overnight. The next morning, if you were on soda business duty, you were going door to door, every classroom, every office, trying to sell soda for $1 a can. And then, then you come back and you learn how to use the register and keep tabs and IOUs and all these things. That got me really like just fascinated in commerce, and I love the cash register and just like pressing the buttons. And those were 2. And then later, I think, joining Hintwater was a big one because I joined and it was like, there wasn't a lot of structure when I got there. And so it was kind of up to me to like hit the gas. And I remember the first meeting I had with this guy, Julio, who's now the CFO. He was like, yeah, just so you know, like most people don't last in this role. Like this is the role that churns the fastest because most people just can't keep up. or hit their numbers. And I remember thinking like, all right, well, I'm not going to be most people here. And, yeah, I just worked my ass off there. And then later I would say probably, like getting an office or like hiring a first employee on W2 is like employee. That was surreal, and seeing payroll happen, and just either, first being very panicked by, oh shit, am I going to make this? To just like, the payroll gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But that like, as long, the business is humming, it's going to be okay. So yeah.
You didn't go to college, correct?
Correct.
So what is that experience like, in the sense of, is that something you would recommend, or how did you come to that conclusion? What did your parents think about that? And how do you think about that decision today, sitting here at 26 years old?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's like it's a per person decision. I don't think there's any blanket answer. I do think though that there are a lot more kids now who have figured out something they're really good at and they're really passionate at, and that intersection, I think Sal calls it the zone of genius. A lot of those kids who drop out end up doing pretty well or pretty okay. But I do think it is, a college degree, like the first few years of your career, it's basically the safety net. That's how I always think of it, is like, those nets underneath construction sites, like if somebody falls, it's just a big net to catch you. That's how I think of like a college degree, and that's how I've always thought about it. And so, and this is separate, if you're becoming like a doctor, a lawyer, something where you have to get these credentials, then it's different.
People always say that, but why don't entrepreneurs create a school for doctors and lawyers that are better than the school that exists?
I think it's, well, they're tied to like systems, right? So there are like medical schools out in the Caribbean, but you're not going to get the MD certification.
Right.
You get a different one.
There's got to be a better way, though.
For sure. I think
that takes less time and creates better outcomes for people.
100%.
There has to be.
But I think for most people, it's definitely a personal choice. I mean, I don't think I would recommend as a blanket statement, you should or you shouldn't go to college. I think it's really down to like who you are as a person. A lot of people just don't even know like what they want to do the rest of their life. I was always fascinated by marketing and sales in high school. And so I was pretty confident that, okay, well, at least for this period, like I think this is what I'm going to go all in on. But even then, it was such a gamble, like such a gamble. I mean, and it's also, it changes your mindset, because now it's like, oh, there is no safety net. So if you're not good at what you're doing to earn your salary, you're completely screwed. And that was something that always like drove me to just always get it done. I mean, even till today, like I'm always, if something's not done, I'm not going to sleep till it's done. 'Cause I know that there is no other safety net. There is no backup plan. There is no like, oh, well, I have a degree, I can go apply somewhere else. And so yeah, for me, I think that's how I looked at it. But in my head, I think it was always an advantage for me, because my mindset was always like, okay, I have to be really good at this. Like there is no option to be okay at this or like average at this. If I'm gonna do it, I have to do the best that I can, and I just got to go all in.
And how did the people around you look at that decision around that time? And did you have to convince them, or was it like, nah,
so
this is a good idea?
I was scared shitless to like tell my family. And I didn't even care about, actually one thing, like in high school and right after high school, I think I used to listen to a ton of like Gary Vee stuff. And his thing was always like, you got to do what makes you happy, and you got to do, you just can't think about other people's opinions, right? And so that was always like ingrained in my head, and it still is today, where I just didn't even care what extended family would say, or what anybody would really say generally. It was just making sure that, okay, my parents, I just got to make sure they're on this side as well. Like they gotta be excited about it. And so I emailed them, because I didn't want to tell them in person or call them. And I emailed them that, And I think my mom said she like cried all night that email, the night that I sent the email. But she came around pretty quickly, and I think she was like, "Oh, actually, he's gonna go all in, and he seems like he's gonna be okay." And then my dad took longer to come around, and then the longest was just everybody else, you know. But like I also didn't care, so like even hearing, you know, we'd go for a Thanksgiving dinner, and people are asking my mom like, "Oh, you didn't make sure your son went to college? Like, isn't that irresponsible as a parent?" And I used to always think like, first of all, why do these people care? You know, like how is it any of their business? But even when I'd hear it, it wouldn't really affect me. I think it would affect my family more, just hearing like, oh, you know, you're an irresponsible parent, or how could you as a mother, you know, not make sure that he goes to college? And but personally, I didn't really care. I was just like, okay, well, I remember joining this ad tech company, and very quickly became I was on the business development team, and I was the one pulling in all the numbers. And that's when I was like, all right, I'm gonna be fine. Like there's you know, if I can crush this is something I learned literally in the last, you know, few weeks. And if I can crush this, then I think I'll be okay. And then my mom saw that, and she was like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna be fine." And then what was funny was a lot of the extended family. Once I got this like Forbes 30 under 30 listing, then they were like, "Oh yeah, we told you didn't need college. You know, we knew it. We knew you were gonna be okay. Yeah, we always knew that."
As if that was the thing. That was really the important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The validation from an institution or
exactly.
Something. It's fascinating.
It's the piece of paper.
Yeah, so weird. You mentioned in that story how Gary Vaynerchuk was the one playing in your head.
Yeah.
And in the voice.
Yeah.
And that helped you send that email and do what you really wanted to do in your heart.
Yeah.
What was it then like to work for him? I know it only lasted 3 months where you were working for VaynerMedia, but did you get up close with him? Did you have time with him?
A couple times. Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 times. I mean, it was sick. The coolest thing was like, I mean, Gary is Gary, but outside of that, seeing how that Vayner ecosystem is built, and how he's built that. There's so much like kindness within that company. There's so much excitement. You know, a lot of people have a side hustle. People are so ambitious there. People are always down to like build together or talk together, do cool things. I really admire the culture that he built there. And I think that was my biggest takeaway was like, you know, that is like the most important thing, because without that, nothing else works, right? If people aren't happy and excited and motivated and they feel like they have the clarity and the equipment, it like nothing else works. Yeah.
How do you take that to Sharma brands?
I mean, I constantly think about, okay, how do we, you know, like, is Bailey happy? Oh, Bailey's unhappy? Well, shoot. How can I fix that? Oh, she's unhappy because she's overloaded on design and she's spending too much time and she's working too late. Okay, let's get her a designer quick. Let's get her somebody who can like take this off her plate. And, you know, so I think of culture all the time. I think of basically I just put it back to like, is this person motivated and are they happy? And that is, I think that's also the reason like we can move so well as a team, and we can get things out so fast, and we can ship things, and we can create things and ideate things. It just comes down to like our you know, our team's culture is like so tight, and it's so everybody feels like they can be themselves. Everybody is extremely pumped about the work they do.
How many people are on the team?
So on the Sharma Brands team, there's probably somewhere between like 14 to 20 people. And then we have another agency called 1180, which is growing, and that's probably 6 to 8 people. And then we have Hooks that we just recently launched, and that's probably like 12, 13 people.
The reason why I asked that is because it seems like you have big visions in your life for where you want to go.
Yeah.
Do you plan to scale that up to more people, or is this like the amount of people that you like working with? I mean, I think of Dunbar's number of being 150 and being like, all right, like can I just take this to 150, or is it something like where you want thousands of people working for you and around you on your stuff? Have you thought about that?
I don't know if I want thousands.
Because VaynerMedia is what, thousands?
Yeah,
It's
probably 1,000, 2,000 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different world.
Right.
I like knowing that we have the right. Like I think of everybody on our team as like a different piece of the toolbox, and we have as long as we consistently have the right toolbox to do the work we're trying to do. You know, if we bring on a certain type of client and they need something else, or I can see that we can probably execute that if we had one more tool in our toolbox, then I try to make sure we have the right toolbox. But yeah, I haven't really thought about like, you know, how many people Sharma Brands will have, or how big it'll get. I definitely know, like, I love having a team. It's like, it is just to me, it's like one of the greatest joys ever is like having a team, having that team group chat or like the Slack that's active and popping off. I love that stuff.
Well, you're clearly doing something right, because last night somebody on your team tweets about you just had an amazing 2.5 hour conversation.
Yeah.
And they were so excited about the conversation that they had to tweet about it. And you stayed up another 3 hours because you were so excited.
I was so fired up.
That to me feels like, oh, you're building a culture that is excited about the work, that's interested, that is engaged, and speaks to your abilities as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like, you know, I learned this year that you basically have to have 3 things for a good culture. You have to have clarity, equipment, and motivation. And so for me, you know, I realized like with this specific project we were brainstorming on, there was like a lack of motivation across the board. And it was because we were thinking about it wrong or thinking about it in a different way. And so we spent those 2.5 hours, and, you know, I was like, hey, here's $25, get some food ordered in. I'm going to do the same. Let's jump on at 6 or 6:30. And, you know, it was only supposed to be, I think, like an hour. But we just kept going, and we had so many good ideas. We had 4 or 5 pages of notes. And then we were like, all right, well, what are the results here? You know, like, all right, we're going to do this, and this is going to be owned by this person, and this person's going to drive it. And then this morning, you know, we both woke up like still super pumped and ready to go.
Do you have a structure for your calls or something like that? Do you have like, all right, this is how we're going to have a most effective call?
No. If anybody listening has a good one, please let me know. But I always try to be more efficient because I spend a lot of time in meetings or talking to other people. So I try to think like, okay, how can I make this the most efficient, you know, 30 minutes, or I hate meetings longer than 30 minutes. I think most meetings can just be 15 or 20, and you can fit more in. But I think, you know, I always go into a meeting with like an agenda, a personal agenda. I don't share it with everybody, but it's just like, okay, from this meeting, these are like the 1 or 2 things I want out of the meeting. These are like the outcomes I want. And potentially I might have 1 or 2 roadblocks I want to discuss as a team or as a group. That's pretty much it.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about the most impactful moments of your career thus far, it was funny looking at your website and seeing 100,000 followers on Twitter at the age of 25 was something that to you was like worthy of noting. And it was a big deal. And when I spoke to Harrison, he was like, Twitter has given Nick special powers.
100%.
So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, Twitter for me is like, to me, I think of it as like, it gave me the fast pass. Like it gave me the Disneyland fast pass. I can go to any ride I want and I'm right at the front of the line. And it's all because I have this Twitter account. And it's a 2-way thing. So like I have to feed the Twitter account with content and good ideas, or engaging with this community that is built around e-commerce and CPG. And then in return, it's like, you know, something as simple as like launching something big on Shopify. Like I'm DMing with Harley, or
interviewing him at this very studio.
Yeah, exactly. or running into it, this happens a lot, and this is one of the things I'm most grateful for. We run into an issue with something, whether it's let's say like an app, for just a Shopify app, run into an issue, or something's not getting done the way it should, and it's like one DM and the thing is fixed. And so I think Twitter has a lot of power. And I'm tripping up because I'm like, I don't want to sound like a douchebag.
No, you're not.
Like, this happens because I have these followers, but
Right.
it's also that two-way street.
Right.
But on the other hand, I actually think anybody on Twitter, like, Twitter is one of those spots where if you think about a customer service inbox, you think about a Facebook page, Instagram page, there's not a lot of two-way communication. I mean, customer service is different. There's definitely two-way, but it's like delayed. Whereas Twitter is like, the founder of a company might be there that you're trying to get in touch with. And like, that guy also has nothing going on his Twitter because he's got, 413 followers. If you tweet him, he will definitely see it.
Yeah.
In fact, he'll probably also get an email from Twitter saying you have a new notification. So there's like, it's basically, it's an arbitrage if you're trying to connect with people. Like, Harrison and I connected on Twitter. And I think there's so many other people. I mean, we connected on Twitter too. There's so many people that I've hired, that I work with, that I have done deals with, that I have invested in their company, and it's all a result of just this, world on Twitter.
What could people do better to be better tweeters?
I think it's just like, you just got to put things out. You just got to like actively share what you're doing, what you're building. Going back to Gary, like, he just says document, don't create. So like, that was one thing when I heard that, I was like, okay, so I run this campaign at Hint. It did really well. Let me just tweet about it. And then all of a sudden it's like Austin Reef is in the DM saying, oh, you run marketing here, want to get coffee in New York. Or, and I think Austin was one of the first people I met on Twitter. And that's when I was like, oh, I can actually, if I just put good things out or things from my world out, I'll meet other really dope people who are also doing similar things. And luckily Twitter is a platform where like smart people hang out on, it's like the smart people, like town square.
Yeah, 100%. And have you noticed any particular inflection points in the Twitter journey and doing particular things? You obviously mentioned to document instead of like pontificate a message like you're an expert. You just show what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is there any other things that you do differently that you think people can learn from or help?
Yeah, I mean, I think Twitter, like, to do well on Twitter, just to like do well on an Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, like, you have to kind of know the format of, how do you hook somebody in and how do you retain their readership? And so I think there's definitely nuances there. Sean Puri's power writing course, like, is a perfect Bible for this, as well as the Ship 30 course. Both of those are like phenomenal if you want to learn how to maximize Twitter or talk about what you're doing and maximize the return on talking about it. So those are super helpful and have been super helpful. I took both. David's course, the Rite of Passage, I took, I think, the first version of it. And that was another one that was a great learning, because I was just like, okay, well, I just got to basically save a bunch of stuff that's interesting, kind of build this database of information. And then I can just take that and synthesize it and add my thoughts and put it out. And it's something completely different, but has a lot of the same characteristics, but it's mine. And so I think that was another one too.
Yeah. And on that point, whenever you have a reaction in your own day-to-day life, think about, what gave me that reaction and can I jot it down?
Oh, that's a great one.
Did you laugh? Did you say, wow, I didn't realize that before? If you catch yourself thinking that or feeling some sort of emotion to something that has just happened, you should jot that down in your notes immediately, because someone
100%.
else might get that feeling as well.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, I like to close with a final challenge for people, because, we talk about all this stuff, but a challenge is something that people can take and do in their own life. So like, from everything we've talked about or something we haven't talked about, what's a challenge you could give to someone listening or watching?
So this is a challenge that all of our interns did this summer, and it was just cool to see it happen, and also the results were amazing. But write one cold email a week. Like make a list of 25 people you want to meet, and it could be anybody from Sammy Clark to Mark Cuban to Jack Dorsey to like even just like somebody who owns your favorite ice cream shop on your block, and just write a cold email and just see what happens. And that power writing course I mentioned is a phenomenal course to learn how to write cold emails. But if you just start writing them and if you just go to Twitter and in quotation marks search cold email or cold emailing, you'll find a ton of content on how to write really good cold emails. And then just send one a week. And I guarantee you will just meet the coolest people ever. And also not a lot of people write really good cold emails. So when you write a really good cold email, it stands out.
And we'll link the thread that you wrote on cold emails below so people can check that out.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your time here today, Nick.
Thank you.
Where can we send people to connect with you further?
Twitter is probably the easiest. Twitter is just at Mr. Sharma, MrSharma.
Linked below. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.